morning, class. Good morning, good morning. Today's lecture is on achieving financial independence earlier than your peers. Please take a seat. We have to get started, all right? We don't got all the time in the world. Take your seat, grab your coffee, grab your notes, and hit the subscribe button. Write a comment down below on any questions you have from the lecture, and we will get to it. We'll go over homework at the end. Welcome back to Wealth Creation College. It is I, Dr. Professor Geno, here to teach you a marvelous life lesson. Or maybe not so marvelous. You guys let me know. Today's topic, like I mentioned earlier, is retiring earlier than your peers, or achieving financial success earlier than your peers. Now, how do you do it? Well, can anyone take a guess? Can anyone in the class take a guess? Raise your hand. You guys can't raise your hands because I'm not live streaming. Is it by A, following what everyone else does? B, cruising through life and maybe taking one or two risks in your career as you go on? Or is it C, by doing what other people don't? If we want to achieve a result that everyone else hasn't achieved, do we do what they do? Of course, class, the answer is no, you do not do what they do. Not at all. However, it sounds much easier in theory than it is in practice. Now, what do I mean by this? Change is scary. We don't like changing industries. We don't like changing jobs. We don't like changing projects even. God forbid we actually change companies, right? And we tend to just get comfortable where we're at and kind of do what feels good and safe. And that's all fine and good until it's not, because then you sit down and you get frustrated, right? 5 years have passed and not much has changed. Well, not much has changed because you haven't changed much. Let's think about that for a second, shall we, class? Not much has changed because you haven't changed much. All right? Well, in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve, you must become a different person, right? Because a different person is the one that is capable of achieving the things that you're aiming for. Right now, you are not. That's why you haven't done it yet. Fair. To borrow an analogy from working out and fitness, we are going to analyze this through the lens of self-improvement, right? Now, if you succeed today in the version you want to be, you actually have already become that person. What do I mean by that, Geno? Dr. Professor Geno, what do I mean by that? I mean that if you want to be jacked out of your mind and cut and like no body fat and be super healthy and you can run a ton, if you ate well today, if you slept well today, if you exercised the appropriate amount with the appropriate intensity and saunaed and done all this stuff, well, while today is a victory, you technically are already that person that would end up having those things, right? Why? Because if you keep that up for long enough, you end up showing the results of the work. But the person you were today, the things you did today, were already successful. You already became that person, if only for a day. The trick is maintaining that over a long enough period of time to develop the other results. So, bringing that back to the financial comparison here, right, about how do we out-succeed our peers or achieve financial independence before our peers do, right, because they're all going to do it at 65, class. That's why you're here. You don't want to do it when you're 65. You want to do it maybe when you're 35, 40, certainly by the time you're 50. So how do we do that? Well, we must become the people that are able to achieve that today. And then continue to do that in perpetuity until the results of the person we've become show in terms of investments or real estate or however you want it to materialize. An amazing product you've created, a successful business, a movie you've made, whatever that might be. So I want you guys to bring it back to today. How do you outperform your peers? You must be different than them, and you must be better than them insofar as the goal you have in mind today. All right? If they're all going out drinking and doing whatever after work and blowing I don't know how much money on silly stuff, pause for a drink, then maybe you shouldn't do that. Or if they're taking super expensive vacations, maybe you can find a different way around it. Or if they're too scared to go for promotions, you need to be the one that's working your ass off and applying to jobs when you go home so that you can get the next promotion at the different job. I cannot tell you, class, how many times people around my life, in my life, close to me and otherwise, come to me, Dr. Professor Geno, and tell me, look, Professor, I'm stuck, right? They promised me this promotion, and these things were going all this well, and they kind of are dangling this carrot in front of me and saying, well, you're going to be put up for promotion, or you'll definitely earn 10% more, right? They're going to give you a pay bump of definitely 10%, or all these different things. And you know how many times that comes to pass? I don't know, maybe 10% of the time, maybe, right? When they say you're up for promotion, then they promote you. Sometimes. If they say you're going to get a pay raise of 10%, maybe you will get that. Sometimes. Realistically, you probably won't. And again, the topic here is outperforming our peers. We want to do better than the average. We want to do better than the median. So if every, person's up for promotion at this many cycles, do you think the right answer is leaving the agency with the people in the job? Or do you think the right choice is changing something about yourself in order to achieve the things you want to? Which one is it, class? Do we A, leave the choice to everybody else, or do we B, take it in hand and do something awesome? Well, I guess it depends on what you prefer, class. Some of you all have different time periods in your lives, and I know I have, right? Where for this month I can achieve a lot, and I can really push myself, and I can buckle down and create a lot of amazing products or further along my project or whatever it might be. And then for this next month, I have to take it easy. It does have to go into cruise control. I do have other things that are more important to me. I cannot simply be so focused on my work. Or it could be researching investments, right? I talked to another gentleman earlier this week that was saying, well, I've been really getting into personal finance and investments, and I'm starting to research index funds and mutual funds and high yield savings and bonds and CDs and all these different companies, individual stock picking, different trading platforms to invest the money through, right? To do all this stuff. And it's like a whole new world for him. And he's being really smart, class. He's being really smart because he's taking it slow. That's fantastic. I'm really happy to see that, because the best way to make sure you don't outperform your peers is to lose all your money. Remember, Warren Buffett's rule number 1 is don't lose your money. And Warren Buffett's rule number 2 is remember rule number 1. Don't lose the money. Best way to outperform your peers, don't get reset to zero. A lot of people, when they start to invest and start to discover this whole world of finance and the fact that they can make their money work for them and that saving is good, will stumble upon investments that seem too good to be true. And that's because they are, frankly, right? That's always how it is. And so you'll end up with investments, me included. Dr. Professor Geno was not immune to that. When I started messing around with investments at the end of high school, start of college, with my own money and some other stuff, and I had plenty of setbacks. I took my lessons early, and I lost my money early, and I learned a lot. Now I'm 28, so it's been a couple years, close to a decade, if not a decade, since those learning experiences. So remember, class, slow and steady is good, but there are a lot of things that you can do to outperform your peers, okay? You must do something different than they're doing. If they're staying at places for 10 years before jumping ship to another company, you cannot stay there for 10 years. You must stay there for less, right? If they're getting a promotion every 5 years, you have to be getting a promotion or stepping up in your role every 2, all right? If they're starting businesses at 50, you have to start a business at 30. If they're researching investments at 35 when they have their first kid, you need to be researching investments when you're 18 going into college. All right? And if anybody's watching this video, if anybody in the class is actually 18 or around that age, please, for the love of everything Wealth Creation College, do me a solid and just throw $100 into an investment account under the S&P 500, VOO, or some other index fund of that nature. You'll thank me when you're 65. You can work out the math another time, class. Now, coming back to the crux of the lecture today and what I want your homework to be. If you want to outperform your peers so badly, you have to do things differently than them. All right? And I'm going to turn to the emotional side here, or the emotional intelligence side, or the psychological side here, instead of just the rote numbers. You're going to get, I don't want to say picked on, but you will certainly be in different ways ostracized, right? You will be othered. It's inevitable. You're going to make different choices and be doing different things. And as you are doing these things, people will say, I'm going to go down the list of things people can say to you. Ready? They're going to say, you're not ready, you're too young, you don't know what you're doing, you can't possibly be responsible for that much, it was just luck, it wasn't because of you that this succeeded, it was all the other people on the team, oh, he's too good for us now, any number of things like that, be it from your previous job and team, or the future job and team, or your friends, or your family, right? A lot of people will have a lot of opinions about what you're doing. And it can feel like a lonely journey. It certainly can. And I want to just prepare you guys for that possibility and eventuality. If you're going to outperform your peers and you're going to end up somewhere that, by the age of 30, that they ended up by the time they were 65, well, when you look around, there's not going to be a lot of 30-year-olds in your position, right? And that can be kind of isolating. Dr. Professor Geno over here hung out with a lot of old people for a long time because it turns out when you climb higher in positions and you do different things, the average age of the people that are your peers and your supervisors or the people you're responsible for go up. And it's somewhat inevitable. Yes, experience does lead to better performance, and age is a big marker of that, but another topic of conversation for another day. Maybe the next lecture will be on how you can cram more experience into shorter periods of time so that you can be as wise as a 60-year-old despite only being 30. But I just want you guys to be prepared for that. Outperformance, you pay for it, right? And if you're sensitive or so sensitive that at the first inclination of social ostracization, yeah, we'll go with that one, you fold and you give up, well, all right, but, you're not going to do what you set out to do. And if you don't want to be othered, if you just want to be fitting in with everybody else, well, spoiler alert, class, you don't actually want to outperform your peers. You think you want to outperform your peers, but if you're not willing to put up with and even love to a certain degree all that comes with it, you don't actually want that. You thought you did, but you didn't actually. All right? For your homework, I want you guys to come up with a plan for this month, just something small, which you are going to do differently in order to become the person that will eventually outperform their peers financially. Maybe it's start applying to jobs. Maybe it's just fixing up that resume that's been, doing nothing but collecting dust for the last 3 years while you've been at a job where they've been promising you a promotion for the last 2. Maybe it's starting on a side project that you've always been wanting to. Maybe it's starting that book or rewriting the script for that movie. Could be anything. That's your homework. I will see you guys in the next lecture. This is Dr. Professor Geno at Wealth Creation College. Class dismissed.